This is Janna Armstrong, our resident scientist and biologist and all that good stuff. Hi, Janna.
Hello, Dominic.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me in this video to discuss my career.
Absolutely. I will. Let me give you a little. Give there. Well, first of all, hang on. Thank you all for being here and for listening and watching. I am here with Janna because if you look at the bottom of the screen, it says that she has had a breakthrough, a malaria vaccine breakthrough, which is like mind blowing. Okay. I mean, how many people do you know in your life that have done something like that? And so we're going to talk about that breakthrough because to me, that is like major self achievement, right? And so I want to say, first of all, congratulations, Janna. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
agreeing to come on with me on the show to celebrate this. And it's phenomenal what you're doing. So if you would please just give us a little bit, like the first time we met was like 15 years ago, but then you came on the show about 3 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, as our
Yes.
person behind the passion, tell our listeners, a little bit about you and what you've been up to, and then we'll talk about this breakthrough, this malaria breakthrough, this vaccine.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, about 3 years ago, I was on the Self Achievement Network video. I had just started my career in malaria research, in actually malaria vaccinology research. And let me kind of give you a background on how I got to where I got this position in at Seattle Children's Research Institute, Center for Global Infectious Diseases. I started my scientific career about 25 years ago. After I graduated from the University of Hawaii, I knew right then coming out that I wanted to work in human-related diseases that were caused by parasites. And but without having any experience in working in the lab, it was very tough for me to land a position in a research lab that did parasite research. And I had a really, really tough journey getting to where I was, where I got to, where I am now. I think that going through that journey really shaped who I became as a scientist. And so when I graduated, I had no laboratory experience, and finding a research position required a lab experience, and so it was really tough finding a job. And so I started my scientific career washing glassware for scientists, for postdocs at the Scripps Research Institute in San Diego. And during that time, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And that was in working in molecular parasitology. Uh, so during my off time, what I did was I connected with postdocs that were doing molecular biology, which is basically manipulating DNA. And so I learned some skill sets that postdocs didn't want to do in the lab. It was more menial. It was very repetitive. But to me, I took advantage of that. I learned as much as I could while I was at the Scripps Research Institute. So my paying job was washing glassware. My volunteer job was working with postdocs. And so once I started gaining that kind of experience, I started applying for a lot of lab jobs. And one of the companies that picked me up um, uh, liked where I was going with my career. And even though my lab experience was somewhat limited, they hired me because apparently they maybe saw the potential that I was. Unfortunately, it was an agricultural biotech, and as a poor person working at a minimum wage job, I took the first job that was offered to me, and that job actually was with the Dow Chemical Company,
Okay.
and what they did was basically genetically alter the genome in crops to increase yield, increase nutritional proteins in the crops. In other words, a lot of people know it as GMOs. And when I was first hired with Dow Chemical, the first thing I said was, I want to learn molecular biology and I want to become very good at it. And so I think, I worked for Dow Chemical for 20 years. And uh, fast forward, I took leadership positions by the time I retired from Dow Chemical in 2017. Um, Dow Chemical was because Dow Chemical and DuPont merged together. They were looking for people to lay off. I volunteered because I knew this was not the path that I wanted to go in my career. I still had that dream of working with human disease parasites. And so I decided that I would volunteer to be laid off. And I moved from the headquarters in the Midwest back home to Seattle. That's where I grew up. And I landed a position in the with Seattle Children's Research Institute in Center for Global Infectious Diseases. This was 3 years ago, and I was able to, because of my skill sets that I had as a genetic engineer, I was able to land a position with the malaria research, one of the biggest malaria research labs in the U.S. And it's a nonprofit organization. And my goal when I started, even back in when I graduated from my undergraduate university, my goal was to find a vaccine and for malaria. And I just happened to land at this position. And so, are we frozen? Am I frozen?
No,
Oh, okay, okay, because I'm frozen on my end. So that's
you're
okay.
fine.
Okay. So, anyways, uh, uh, using CRISPR technology, which is basically a gene editing technology, uh, I'm able to actually genetically alter the parasite that causes malaria, and depending on what proteins we want to target or leave out of the parasite's DNA. I can do that through using CRISPR technology. And so when I started working there, we were, because of the complexity of the malaria parasite's life cycle. So the part of what's required in the life cycle of the parasite is the mosquito stage and then the human stage. And in the human stage, after, let's say, a mosquito, an infected mosquito infects a human, immediately the parasite enters the liver stage. They invade the liver cells, and then they go through this development, and then after that they break out of the liver cell and then start invading the red blood cells, and that's where humans start to uh, get the symptoms of being very ill.
Wow.
And and they have to have the parasite has to live in the red blood cells, and so they can multiply. So you have one parasite entering a one red blood cell, and then you have thousands coming out of that one same red blood cell, and then those parasites infect other red blood cells. And so the goal for this particular parasite that we have developed was to basically stop it at its liver stage development, and so that it cannot invade the red blood cells.
Mhm.
And so through genetic engineering, we were able to basically produce a parasite that could not develop further in late stage liver invasion. And so after doing many tests and in the lab, we were able to show that it had some protection against our models that we tested it against. And so after many tests, we showed that it could go actually progress into human clinical trials, and that is where we are now. That particular we call it recombinant or transgenic parasite.
Mhm.
So basically, what this parasite does is once the vaccine will elicit an immune response. The parasite will it's an attenuated organism, so it's dead basically, but it carries still the protein, so it can trigger the immune response when you're injected with the vaccine. And so um, and this immune response will basically stop the wild type parasite in its tracks at the liver stage. So, anyways, that is where we are, and I this is the first time I've had something so significant happen in my career, as getting this vaccine into clinical trials. And the reason why I'm so excited about it is because I took I was it's a three-person team that developed this vaccine.
Mhm.
And I'm just so proud to be a part of this team that has developed this vaccine that has a very high efficacy. That means a very high efficiency in protection. In our models. Now, the human clinical trials will show the real test. Even so, now that we have this vaccine in clinical trials, we are still making more vaccines um, to just get things through the pipeline, through the pipeline, products
Mhm.
through the pipeline. And so we are doing this with in collaboration with a manufacturing company. Since our lab is so small, we can't manufacture this vaccine at a larger scale. So we, are collaborating with a company that can make this vaccine on a larger scale. We are hoping that we can develop a vaccine that is cheap to make, um, um, that is very robust in the sense that, so if they were to go to the vaccine were to go to a third world country, that it is stable in warm temperature, because most vaccines have to be refrigerated. Ideally, we would love to have a one dose vaccine instead of two dose, because the reason why is people have to walk for miles to get their vaccine. And so if you have a two dose, you're going to have a lot of individuals now are not going to want to walk,
Right.
miles and miles for that second dose.
Mhm.
So we want to be able to have it available to them at their location, and where there probably is little to no electricity, so we could forget about refrigeration. So that is where we
A lot
are,
of
where I
challenges
am
there.
now. Yes, and I'm so excited.
I mean, I'm sitting here, I can see that you're excited.
Yeah.
I'm like pinching myself and thinking, am I really sitting here talking to someone that has made this major breakthrough? And I'm like, wow,
Yeah. Yes.
how
Yes.
fortunate am I, and how damn cool are you?
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, there are vaccines out there right now that, in fact, they just released an RNA-based vaccine for malaria, and this one this is fantastic, is really made for children, because children at the age of 5 and younger are very, very susceptible to mortality when infected with malaria.
Mhm.
And so the current vaccine that is out for adults, it has a 65% efficacy, which is not great. And you want to target for about 75%, because with 75% efficacy, it can lead to eradication.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't have a pen in front of me. I just reached over and grabbed it. I had several questions that were popping into my brain while you were talking. One of which is, do you can you describe for us? I'm sure you probably know, like, what what are the symptoms of malaria, and then how widespread is it in the world? And you mentioned, poor countries or whatever, but that, I mean, is it? I don't even know. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, okay. Unfortunately, malaria is caused by two different parasites, um, two different species. One of them is a more far prevalent than the other one, and the one that we have the vaccine is that's going into clinical trials, and the one that there are vaccines out are target the one that's more prevalent. Um, that one, 350,000 people are infected by it. And children under the age of 5, 25% of them die from it.
Wow.
The basically the symptoms is when the parasite enters the blood stage. This is a blood parasite, even though it invades the liver cells as part of its development and life cycle. Um, um, so basically, you get bit by an infected female Anopheles mosquito, and um, the mosquito injects the parasite unknowingly, and the parasite travels through the capillaries into the red blood, into the um, um, circulatory system of the humans. And I saw a video of it, and how fast it travels. It travels so quickly, and somehow they migrate. They can find the liver cells. They migrate to the liver cells, and they invade the liver cells. And just like red blood cells, one comes out and one enters in, and then hundreds exit out. And
Boy.
so right. And what I'm speaking of is the species that is more prevalent. So it's about a week. It takes about a week for it to invade the liver cells and develop, and before it starts to go invade red blood cells. And um, patients don't, or victims of malaria don't feel it at all when it's in the it's in the liver.
Mhm.
It's when they start actually invading red blood cells. Initially, they don't feel it in the when it invades the red blood cells. It's when they start proliferating on an exponential level. They'll invade a red blood cell, break out of that red blood cell, and there's like thousands of them breaking out of that one red blood cell, and those thousands invade one single red blood cell, and those will break out and there'll be thousands of so it's more the anemic sort of feeling, and being very tired, having a fever. It's the red blood stage that causes the symptoms.
Mhm.
And then some of those that break out of the red blood cells are sexual. There's a male and a female. Those get taken up when a mosquito does another blood feed, and they get taken up by the mosquito. So it's just a cycle. It's a complete life cycle of the parasite. Now, the other species is that type of malaria is much harder to find a vaccine for, and that is because the liver stage of that parasite can last for years, so they can be in hibernation for years before there's any sort of symptoms.
Wow.
And so a patient may go to a country that has this species, which is usually this species is found in Southeast Asia and South America. The one that's more prevalent is found in Africa, in the tropical belt.
Mhm.
And so the one that is very hard to detect, a patient will go travel to an affected country, come back, and feel fine, and years later, all of a sudden they get sick, and then they find that there's malaria in their body,
Mhm.
and that's because they can hibernate in the liver cells for a very, very long time, and thus evading the antibodies or the immune system. And
Mhm.
so that is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to find a vaccine for that particular species. So that I hope I answered your question.
You did, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so I mean, I'm not like Mr. Holistic health person and all that, but I have done like several liver cleanses in my life because out of prevention, and they're the ones that I've done where they were always talking about to get rid of any type of parasites in the liver. And I mean, the way that I talk to myself is like, oh my god, what if I have a parasite in my liver and I'm gonna die, and I better do this today, and like that. So I mean, it all sounds like kind of like a creep show. I mean, a bad horror movie, because we're like 2 days away from 3 days away from Halloween, right? Or two. And I'm thinking to myself, these little creatures are in there multiplying. It's like,
Dominic, have you ever seen the monster that lives inside me? It's like a PBS show of different types of parasites living in humans.
well, I know there's like gajillions of them all over the place. We have
Yeah.
a symbiotic relationship with parasites all over our body and our eyes. They're swimming around. They're like, you know. But to think that they're doing all this, you know, multiplying and things like that is just, I mean, it's kind of like, it's really intriguing. Like,
It
how
is,
in
and
the
it's
world do they do that? And how do, the whole liver cleanse thing, how it's not just doing a flush through the liver that's going to get rid of those types of parasites, right? This is
right.
something that,
Exactly. And what's unfortunate is people ask, this disease has been out since before mankind. Well, not mankind, but yes, it has, because it was, there's a rodent type of malaria. There's a canine type of malaria. Um, and people ask, this disease has been here around for thousands of years, and why haven't we found a cure for it?
Mhm.
And the reason for that is there's not enough funding, especially here in the United States, in civilized modern world. There's not enough funding going into malaria research because it is a third world problem. That
Right. So
that's
it's not,
that. Yeah,
if it
exactly.
was here in the United States, all of a sudden people would get on board and
Oh yeah. Oh, you can get a lot of people. I mean, you've got a lot more people on board in finding a cure for baldness than there's more funding for baldness research than
insane, isn't it?
this because it affects, we're Americans are very vain individuals, and not really focused on taking care of our brothers and sisters of other in other countries. And so, it would be really nice if we got more funding. Maybe we could, as, you know, increase the speed of finding a cure for it. I mean, look at
Mhm.
COVID. They found a vaccine in 6 7 months, which is really that is really unheard of, and it's because there was so much funding going into COVID research, and why can't we get that? In the in for research for diseases in third world countries.
Mhm.
We're just not gonna get that kind of support, and so finding a vaccine that works well for malaria is a breakthrough, because it doesn't happen very often,
Mm.
and because of the funding. And so I'm very proud to say that I work on a less popular project, um, and yeah, that's something that I've been very passionate about since
I
I
am just blown
left
away, and
college.
I can't say it with more passion or heart. Congratulations to you, and thank you for what you do. I mean, you're right. The funding is not there for these other ones. I always think, I see, for example, these people that have a lot of money, and I'm not going to name names, but then they don't do anything with it, or
Yeah.
they give it away to this charity and that charity, and
Yes.
they're not really looking at a broader picture.
Right.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to what I would like to eventually do. I've been in the science field for a very long time, and I will always, my heart will always be with malaria research. Um, just recently, I have decided to move into the real estate investment area, and I have drawn out my goals of what I want to do with the profits, and what I would like to do with the profits in the real estate investment, in commercial real estate investment, is to eventually fund um, the malaria research, continue funding malaria research, and I hope to be able to leave a legacy in that area, even if I'm not actually in the lab doing it. I would like to leave my imprint on the research.
Hmm.
Yes,
Wow. And I mean, if that's the root problem, is
yes,
funding,
yes.
you're
And
going after the real cure.
what is very interesting is the more I meet commercial real estate investors, the more I'm finding that they feel the same way. And in fact, I've met one investor that is just delighted in what I'm doing with the malaria research, and she has said, and she says, I would like to fund too. Once I get to that point, I would like to start funding for malaria research.
Hmm.
And because she's from Venezuela, and she knows how it has affected her family, her friends, the disease.
Hmm. Whew, that is amazing,
Yeah,
truly.
thank you.
I mean,
Yeah,
really, like, I always say to people that I talk to in the Self Achievement Network, you can do anything you want here,
ex-
as long as you keep this connected to this, everything works out fine. And I just absolutely love that you're gonna make a transition. It sounds like, oh, real estate investment. Oh, she just wants to make money. No, you're gonna take those profits, and you're gonna actually do something with it that's close to your heart. So
exactly, exactly.
thank you.
Thank you very
You're a
much.
good human.
Thank you. And so are you. You are too.
Thank you. Wow. So, all right. So this thing is in the trial stage. Is that the right way to say it?
Yes, so there's 3 phases of a clinical trial. And so I mean, the clinical trial is very long. It's a long process, so it could take anywhere up to 5 to 10 years, because it has to pass all the tests before you wanted to inject these things into humans. So we are it'll go into the human clinical trials, and so there's a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I will say that majority of vaccines that go into the clinical trials drop out because they didn't meet certain criterias. That is the reason why we continue to make more new vaccines, in hopes that one of them will give the results we need, both
Mhm,
in humans and out in the population, and we'll continue to do that.
mhm. Wow.
But it's exciting because this is the first time I've ever had worked on something that I had so close to my heart forever and ever, and to go into clinical trials, because it's very hard to make it to even to clinical trials.
I can imagine. I mean, when I met you, I know you were working at Dow. You were down in Indianapolis,
Uh-huh. Hmm.
right? And then, we didn't talk for a while, but then we kind of reconnected. We were kind of connected a little bit on social media. And then when, I just decided one day I need to interview you because I know you're doing something amazing, right?
Thank you.
When you were on the show the last time, you said this was like your goal to eradicate malaria.
Hmm.
Thinking to myself, who does that?
Yes, I don't want to see people sick and
I know.
and
I was like,
children
I
dying.
can't barely change the tire on my car. I mean, you're going to be like eradicating malaria. Something
Thank you.
makes me feel like this big.
No,
I'm
no,
joking.
everybody has a part.
I'm
I
joking.
believe everybody has a part in making a difference in other people's lives. People
Absolutely.
with good heart,
But yeah,
they make a difference.
when I saw that you had posted that about the breakthrough, I was like, did I like called you? I mean, not called you, but I like instantly, boom. I got to
Yeah,
hear the
you
story.
did. You
It's
did.
so intriguing. I
I
mean, your
did
whole
it.
background, and
You,
I know that this is, something that is close to your heart because you have had polio, which
yes.
was, you came from. Okay, so you can tell the story because I
Yes.
only know like bits and pieces. You were a
Oh
little
no, yeah,
girl,
no, yeah, yeah,
you were in an
sure.
orphanage, and
Right.
you were adopted, and you had polio. Go ahead.
Right. So basically, I was born in Vietnam, and during the war, and I was placed in an orphanage at a very very young age, and unfortunately, the polio vaccine was not available there. It was, the polio had been eradicated around the world, except, in third world countries such as Vietnam. And so polio, the organism that causes polio, is extremely contagious. And you know how children put their hands in their mouth. The you know A lot of children in the orphanage contracted polio, and like I said, it was because it was not available during the war.
Mhm.
And so I think that was one of the reasons my drive to find cures, because there was actually a cure, but it wasn't available, because there was a war going on, plus it was a third world country. And I thought to myself, it would be wonderful if I could be involved with a team that can develop something that is robust enough that to be cheap to make, and to be heat stable, in the sense that it could withstand African temperatures, without going bad, because most
Right.
vaccines have to be refrigerated, and
Mhm.
most villages don't have electricity.
Right.
So and it to be I hope to be making it like a one dose thing, vaccine, because it's hard for individuals to walk for miles and miles to get a vaccine, and if it's a two dose, they will have to come back, weeks
Twice. Yeah.
later, yeah, to get the second vaccine, and most likely they won't get the second vaccine. So
And we're
um
not talking about, a couple hundred people. This is like, I can imagine
talking about
millions,
thousands.
millions of
Yes,
thousands.
yeah, yeah, yes, millions of people, actually, because it affects in India, all all the sun belt or tropical belt countries, except for, I didn't know this until I started doing the malaria research. um the United States had malaria. They had the disease, especially in Florida, Texas, the South had it. We were lucky enough that we sprayed DDT to get rid of the mosquito that carries the parasite. So we were able to eradicate it out of the U.S. But you have malaria in Central America, in
Mhm.
South America. So um yeah, that
It's a big
is what
challenge.
yeah, that is,
It's
and
a
that's the
huge
reason. I think
challenge.
that's one of the reasons, because I have I have polio, um, that it wasn't available, and I want these
How sad
vaccines
is
to be.
that?
Yes,
Yeah, you know, and I mean, I think about all the different things that people could be doing on this planet besides arguing and creating wars. They could be eradicating things like this that
sure, sure, and
would make a real impact and raise the
on the economy,
every.
because exactly. I mean, these third world countries are third world because a lot of, caused by a lot of the diseases, and people are sick all the time. How can they go to work? So the economy is in these areas are horrible, and just very low because of the diseases that are constantly going on in these uh, third world countries.
Hmm. Wow, such an amazing story.
Yeah, thank you, thank you,
You are a mind blower.
thank you.
So funny because yeah, you know, I've seen you and I know your age is like 42 or 3.
I'm sorry?
Your age, you're like 42 or 43, right?
Oh, yeah, you could you could yes, please say that. No, I'm
No,
add another
seriously.
10 years.
Well, I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching you and listening to you and looking at your body language and everything, you look like this excited like 16-year-old or 18-year-old kid.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
No,
it's just so adorable.
I'm in
It's
my
great.
50s. I'm in my
You-
50s, so yeah. But it took me a long time to get where I wanted to go, but the thing is you're going to get there if you are passionate enough to reach your goals. And yes, I took a 25-year route to get to my goals, but it is so worth it because after 3 years of doing this, I've met one of my many goals.
It's amazing. You
Yeah, so
probably
don't
wake up
ever
in the
give up on
morning,
your goals.
you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm Janna Armstrong.
Yeah. Every day.
That's me.
Yeah.
You're
So,
awesome.
yeah, I'm so excited.
Wow. Well, I can say the best of luck. I mean, I don't know if it's luck,
Thank
but I hope everything goes as planned, and you know your investment um, project. Hope that all goes well. Is there if there's anything ever that I can do or we can do here in the network to support you, just do this. Knock on
you.
the door.
Okay.
Say
Thank
hey.
you so much,
You
Dominic.
know, and we'll share this out. Make sure you have the link and you can share this wherever you want to share it, and I'll put it on
Okay.
all over the network and share it on my timeline and all that stuff. So wow, thank you so much for
Okay.
joining me.
Thank
I really, 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 really
and thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much for your time and letting me be on this show.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Okay, so until next time, we'll see you. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
joining us here, and remember to have fun and stay inspired, like this woman right here.
Thank you.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay.